All right, welcome everybody to the January 28th regular council meeting for the city of Courtenay. And I'd like to start by respectfully acknowledging that the land in which we're gathered is the unceded territory of the Comox First Nation, the traditional keepers of this land. We don't have any late items, but we'll move into adoption of minutes from January 14th. All right, it's been, thanks, Councillor Morin. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, we'll accept the minutes unanimously and we'll move into presentations. And I don't see Inspector Mercer here. So what we'll do is we'll just vary the agenda, and I think when Inspector Mercer gets here, we can pop back to that. And we'll move on to item 5.1, Corporate Facility Energy Management Plan. If that's all right, and I'll pass it over to Mr. Garbett.
Thank you. Through the Mayor to Council, Janine Tazioli will provide an overview of the Corporate Facility Energy Management Plan report, and we have our Director of Engineering and Environmental Division online, as well as a consultant, Ms. Tazioli.
Thanks, Mr. Garbett. Welcome, Mayor and Council. I'm looking forward to presenting our Corporate Facility Energy Management Plan. This plan represents more than a year of work with our consultant from Prism Engineering, who's joining us virtually. And we'll be talking about what this plan means for our buildings and the path forward. So our objective is modern and efficient facilities and reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So this plan identifies the specific upgrades and retrofits required to achieve those greenhouse gas reduction targets required by the Provincial Climate Change Accountability Act in buildings owned by the city. The pie chart shows a breakdown of our greenhouse gas emissions portfolio across all aspects of the city. So this plan addresses the natural gas used in buildings as well as the electricity used in buildings, which collectively represent 43% of our emissions profile. In addition to looking at what specific projects to do, part of this project looked at how to be successful with the implementation. And these are some key measures that came through. So we want to focus on the buildings that consume the most natural gas. That will give us the largest reductions. We want to align our equipment replacements with the end of life of equipment. We'll work with BC Hydro to ensure that there's enough electricity to supply our facilities at the time that we need it. Also working to align with their funding programs. We'll consult building occupants to ensure that we're accounting for their comfort and the use of the building. We'll seek external grants and funding, and we'll track our progress. We'll make sure that we have systems in place to monitor and measure the performance of the buildings and the utility consumption. So the scope of this project included our primary facilities and our smaller facilities. The primary facilities represent 90% of our emissions profile. And for those ones, we've done a detailed ASHRAE Level 2 energy assessment. This portion of the project was funded by FCM and the Green Municipal Fund and their Community Building Retrofit Initiative. And the final report is attached in Attachment 2. Our smaller facilities represent only 18% of our emissions. We did a higher level assessment because these are more simple buildings with less moving parts. And that final report is included in Attachment 4. So this is a summary of our top emitters. The Lewis Center was among the highest, followed by the Operations Center, Native Sons Hall, Memorial Pool, Fire Hall, Library, and Art Gallery. The proportion of the space on the graph represents the proportion of the emissions. So as we had reviewed, 90%, the green and the blue, are covered by our major facilities, and that green square represents a collection of our smaller facilities, which include lift stations, street lighting, washroom buildings, etc. So our approach is a series of retrofits and upgrade projects planned from 2026 to 2050. The general approach will be to optimize the operation of our existing equipment, upgrading equipment at the end of life for facilities that are currently being used. So in cases where facilities may be retired or are at the end of their lifespan, we will not be upgrading the equipment in those facilities. We'll replace the existing equipment with high efficiency electric options. And then after that's complete, we'll consider on-site renewable energy. And this approach really follows a phased approach, with the first phase is focusing on reducing our gas use, switching to electric options, making our electric options more efficient, and then looking at on-site generation to further reduce our greenhouse gas reductions and build resilience for the city so we are resilient against power outages. So this is a summary of what the proposed plan means as far as greenhouse gas reductions across our portfolio. So in the business as usual case, if we were to not proceed with this plan and simply replace equipment at end of life with no consideration for its consumption of gas or its efficiency, we would have some moderate gains just from equipment becoming more efficient. However, the most gains really come with the implementation of this plan, where we are considering what reduces our emissions most and planning for things that are end of life and completing those projects in a strategic way. You'll also notice on this graph, there are 2 emission targets. These are provincial emission targets that are outlined in the Climate Change Accountability Act. And so it is our goal and direction we've received from council so far to prepare a plan to meet those reduction targets. And we can see the timeline for when we might expect those reductions on this graph. I will note that this is all modeled, and our actual performance will be measured as we go once we complete some of those upgrade projects. So this is a summary of the financial implications. The costs here are the capital costs to complete the projects. Also noted are the base case costs for each year. And the base case represents that cost for equipment that is at the end of life, and if we were to just replace it with no consideration for greenhouse gas reductions, that's the cost that we would incur. So this project has been grant funded so far with no tax impacts. There are a number of grant funding streams available for implementation phases. We also have some reserve funds available that must be spent on greenhouse gas reduction initiatives through our LGCAP, Local Government Climate Action Plan funds. And these amounts were provided in the 5-year financial plan and 2026 budget for council consideration. So with that, we have a couple of resolutions for consideration, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Excellent. Thank you very much for the presentation. It's good to see things meander along, and it's really like the diagram just kind of showing where most of the energy is coming from, kind of in comparison with the other buildings. With that, I'll pass it over to Councillor. I don't think the mouse is working. Councillor Cole Hamilton.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor, and thanks so much for the report, Janine. This is important work, and it's good to see that we're doing it in a very cost-effective way. I appreciated seeing that all of the studies so far have all been produced by grant funding, and the LGCAP funding obviously comes from the province and is required to be spent on exactly this kind of work. So I guess my question was just to dig a bit deeper on the funding aspect. It strikes me that the base case that you spoke of, which is replacing like with like, if we just we're going to do business as usual, that would be covered by the SIP. So, and it would make sense that it would be covered by the SIP, by my way of thinking. It's replacing existing infrastructure, and the increase in level of service would be covered, would make sense to be covered by LGCAP. And I'm wondering if that is a way of allocating the expenditures required to implement this. If you had any thoughts on the way it's currently structured, which I think is all LGCAP versus using the SIP to cover replacement of existing infrastructure.
Thanks, Councillor Cole Hamilton. I'm able to provide some technical background around those base cases. So because there is a base case cost, I think that proportion is eligible for funding through the SIP, which is the Sustainable Infrastructure Program. But using that fund would be a choice made by council and our financial officer. So I think that perhaps that could be a budget conversation, but maybe I'll defer to Mr. Garbett to weigh in.
Thank you. Through the mayor, when we presented the financial plan, capital projects were identified ranging from linear to vertical assets. Some of them are funded by the SIIP funds, and it would be given the amount of asset management we need to do, the recommendations, a variety of sources to these building improvements. And so at this point, our finance officer, when we discussed this at the financial plan, can run over the table that was presented to council on the number of items in 2026, 7, 8, and what their proposed capital funding sources are. But at this point, yes, all of these items would be SIIP eligible. And in the current plan, some of them for the works that are planned are using SIIP money, and some are using reserves, other types of reserves. So we could note that. And although Mr. Langmar is attending this meeting electronically, if he wants to weigh in any further, but I think that's the status at this point.
Could I ask a clarifying follow-up question? I mean, I know in the staff report, it referenced using LGCAP funds, but I also note the resolution that was on the screen a second ago doesn't speak to where the funding is going to come from. So would I be correct in thinking that the actual decision, SIP versus LGCAP, will be made at a later date and doesn't need to be made today, given that it's not referenced in the recommendations?
Thank you, through the mayor. That would be my recommendation at this point. And as I said, Mr. Langmar is participating electronically. If he thought that we needed any different direction than that, he would respond. So we can wait till that discussion could be tackled at our February 11th meeting, where the financial plan will be presented.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thanks, Councillor Cole Hamilton and Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor, and thanks very much for the work on this. I'm just curious if I don't think we have any solar installations yet, apart from the crosswalks. Do you know at what point we will start doing solar additions to new roofs? I wasn't sure whether the Woodcote Park replacement might have included that, but that's gone ahead before this report. So I just appreciate an update on when you think we might actually see solar roofing panels on city buildings.
Great question, Councillor Hillian. I think it's important to note that there's two different objectives when it comes to solar panel installations. So in some cases, it's a great way to provide electrical service in locations that don't have power hookup. And we see small solar panels used in that way across the city for temporary traffic billboards or lighting, that kind of thing. When we're looking at permanent installations on our facilities, that's planned in 2041 and beyond. This plan takes us to our 2050 goals, and the intention of those installations is for on-site generation. So we can power our buildings using power generated on-site to build resilience and reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. And that's not something we would pursue until our buildings are already electric and efficient, so that we can, use that solar powered generated on site most effectively.
Thanks very much. Appreciate that. And Councillor McCollum.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor, and thanks for the report. It's great to see this coming through, and yeah, our approach and the rationale to how we're funding it, and the how we're going to address those transitions over time based on when our equipment is needing replacement, and looking for opportunities to improve how we're using energy in our buildings makes a lot of sense to me. One question I did have is, as far as I could tell, there wasn't a lot of analysis on whether or not there's cost savings, and in terms of like future operational costs going with electricity over natural gas. And I mean, with the change in taxation on natural gas, with the carbon tax being removed, and I realize there's a lot more variability with natural gas than I think electricity rates are reasonably predictable. But I'm wondering if we have a sense of whether or not this represents an operational savings, or like for like, or if you have any insights into that, that would be good to know as well.
Thanks, Councillor McCollum. We do have data on that, and I will point out that it is available in attachment 3 and appendix B or C. That has a list of all of the specific upgrades that are planned at each building. And for each specific upgrade, it indicates if we can expect some operational savings or not. And in cases where we are switching from gas to electricity, it's likely that we may have additional utility costs because electricity so far has been more expensive than gas. In cases where we are using electricity more efficiently, we do expect an operational cost savings. And so it's quite project dependent, and we have those two variables happening at the same time, where we are increasing electricity use while decreasing gas use across our portfolio.
Sorry, which attachment did you say that was? Attachment 3, appendix?
Appendix B.
Maybe mine are numbered differently. I'm sorry, I didn't see that when I was reading through the reports. Appendix B, I'll find it. Yeah, we can carry on, but yeah, that's useful, and that does make sense to me that it's case dependent.
So I misspoke. Attachment 4, appendix B.
Oh, okay. Yeah, in the big report. Okay, thanks. I'll go back and look at that.
And thanks, Councillor McCollum and Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. In the case of the native Sons Hall, that's something that you're interested in doing sooner than later, it looks like. Where's that heating plant at? Like, does it need to be replaced this year? Is that why it's first on the docket?
Great question, Councillor Frisch. That heating plant definitely needs to be replaced. It's end of life, and I was told by our facility maintenance folks that we could be experiencing cold spells if we don't replace it in short order. So that one is at the top of our priority list for that reason.
Yeah, and yeah, I don't know a lot about heating systems, but it looks like it's maybe 60,000 to replace it with the existing, something like what we have. I assume that's a gas, I don't know, boiler or something similar. Yet it's $350,000 for an electric. I assume, is it a heat pump or is it an electric boiler? Or no? Sorry to get into the nitty gritty. It's a lot of money. It's a huge difference between the electric version and the gas version. And maybe there's also some other pieces that have to be replaced for changing fuel source.
Great question. Is our consultant from Prism on the line? I think this would be a great technical question to get some of their input. So I'll pass that over to Emma from Prism.
Hi, can you all hear me?
Yep.
Yes, great. Thank you so much for that question. That's a good one. So the Native Sons Hall boiler plant, heating plant upgrade actually is with a higher efficiency boiler, but there's other work involved that has increased the cost. And specifically that has to do with the piping through the building. So while we were on site, we noticed that the way it has been piped to the building leads to inefficiencies, a lot of heat radiating to spaces where it doesn't need to be, so a lot of losses along the way. And so this upgrade, most of the cost is to improve those efficiencies that will critically help with occupant comfort and improve the efficiency of the system overall. So that's where we see a big cost difference.
Yeah, thanks for that. I guess I just want to make sure that staff are looking at it obviously with a critical eye, trying to figure out, because we are entering a bit of a recession, if anyone's not noticed. And so maybe we make sure that we're doing what needs to be done in the most efficient way. And it sounds like that's what you're doing. So I appreciate that. Thanks.
Okay, that was gonna be my next question. I don't see any questions. Somebody like to second it? All right, motion's moved and seconded. Any questions or comments with motion on the floor? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any motion carries. All right. We'll move on to next item under Financial Services, Courtenay Marina Society Renewal Lease. And at this point, I'll just declare my conflict of interest, and I'll pass it over to Councillor Morin as acting mayor and vacate my seat.
Okay, so I think I'll hand it over to staff to introduce this this report. Thank you. I need to use my mic. Yeah. It's usually on the other side. The original just.
Thank you through the acting mayor to council. Our manager of procurement, risk and real estate, Scott Hainsworth, is going to introduce this report.
Thank you, Mr. Garbett. Through the city manager to the acting mayor and council, this report seeks council direction on renewing the lease with the Courtenay Marina Society for the city-owned marina lands on the Courtenay waterfront. The city has leased the marina facilities to the Courtenay Marina Society for over 30 years to support public access to the water, including small motorized and non-motorized vessels. The society is a not-for-profit organization that operates and maintains the marina on behalf of the city. Over time, the society has made investments in the marina at its own expense, including dock upgrades, storm repairs, safety improvements, and ongoing maintenance. The current lease term expires at the end of 2025, or has expired at the end of 2025, and the society is requesting a renewal effective January 1st, 2026. As part of the renewal, staff reviewed existing revenue sharing, the existing revenue sharing arrangement, and commissioned an independent appraisal to establish the market rental value of the submerged lands. The appraisal determined that the market lease value is approximately $10,100 annually, recognizing the unique constraints of the site, including tide-dependent access as well as limited amenities. Staff also considered the broader planning context. A local area plan for the Courtenay Air Park and Marina Precinct is scheduled for 2027, and staff recommend that the lease be revisited once that planning work is complete to ensure alignment with future land use direction. Council is presented with several options ranging from maintaining the status quo revenue sharing model to moving immediately to a full market lease rate. Staff are recommending option 1, a graduated lease rate. This approach transitions from the current revenue sharing model to toward full market rent over the 5-year term. The recommended option balances fiscal responsibility with the operational realities of a small not-for-profit society, reducing administrative complexity over time, and maintains continuity of marina operations while longer-term planning is underway. Staff are also recommending updated lease provisions to streamline administration, including GST treatment and clearer membership requirements. In summary, the recommended approach supports public access to the waterfront, recognizes the society's long-standing role and investments, and positions the city to reassess the arrangement once broader precinct planning is complete. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Great, thank you. And I see Councillor Hillian has a question. Go ahead.
Thanks, acting mayor. I was just curious, thanks for the work on the report, by the way. I was curious about if market value is that amount now. In 5 years, isn't it going to be more? And does it put us into another catch-up situation?
It could potentially put us at another catch-up situation. I think to a much lesser degree than what we're looking to achieve at this time. I think given the magnitude of the change, staff didn't feel like an additional cost or CPI increase was necessary, but we can certainly look at that if council wishes.
Okay, and Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks, Acting Mayor. My question is around whether the society collects the fees and then remits the rest to us. That's how it works. It kind of flows through them. And so I'm wondering if we're going to increase their rates, if you think it's realistic that they'll be able to charge those rates based on, you know, it's very title access there. So do you think the market will bear that, or is that our assumption then when we get them up to, you know, $10,000 in lease fees to us?
Sorry. No, thanks for the question. Based on feedback from the Marina Society and a review of their financial statements, we didn't think that there was this was causing a real barrier to their financial operations. So initial feedback hasn't raised any red flags.
Okay, thanks very much.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? No one opposed? Okay, thank you. I guess we'll call the mayor back in.
Thank you, Councillor Morin, much appreciated. And we'll move into the fire department, UBCM Community Emergency Preparedness Fund grant application. And I'll turn on your microphone there in a sec. All right, and Mr. Garbutt.
Yeah, thank you. Through the mayor to council. This report in front of you, Chief McDonald is going to give an overview. I just wanted to continue to highlight the partnership and leadership that we continue to have our fire department evolve into a multi-jurisdictional emergency management support center. This has been discussed at the CAO level, that this kind of joint approach, both through grant support and program support to the emergency program, is really critical for it to be effective. And I want to take every opportunity to highlight the partnership that we continue to support. Chief McDonald.
Thank you. Through the CEO to Mayor and Council. The purpose of this report is to seek council approval to reapply for the following Union of BC Municipalities Community Emergency Preparedness Fund regional application streams: the Emergency Operations Center Equipment and Training, Emergency Support Services Equipment and Training Funding, Public Notification and Evacuation Planning, and Indigenous Cultural Safety and Humility. As this CEO has stated, this application is being made in partnership with the Comox Valley Regional District, Town of Comox, Village of Cumberland, and Comox First Nation, which allows us to look at these projects with a regional lens and provide maximum value to the amount of funding that's coming in. Fairly straightforward report, and happy to take any questions if you have any on them.
Fantastic. I really appreciate it. It's great to see this regional partnership on these applications. And I don't really see Councillor Morin.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for being diligent in applying for grants. This is on the heels, of course, of the regional big award that the region received for the community resiliency Fire Smart. So hopefully you'll be just as lucky with this one. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, it's been moved and seconded. I don't think there's much discussion. All those in favor? Any opposed? And motion carries. And the next item is Courtenay Fire Department Annual Report. Back to you, Fire Chief.
Thank you. Through the CEO to Mayor and Council. Again, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to present the Courtenay Fire Department's 2025 Annual Report. I'll be providing you an overview of what the department did over the past year, starting with who we are, then moving into response activity, prevention, training, and our work beyond municipal boundaries. The Courtenay Fire Department operates as a composite department, combining a small career staff with a large volunteer component. Our volunteers handle a significant portion of emergency response, particularly in evenings, nights, and weekends, early evenings. This model continues to work because of our strong training coordination and a high level of commitment from our members, which is a theme that you'll see reflected through the rest of this report. Looking at overall response activity in 2025, the department responded to 1,306 calls for service. That's slightly lower than 2024, and this decrease was driven mainly by fewer ambulance assists and fewer open burning responses. While the total number of calls declined, the amount of time and effort required to manage incidents remained substantial, particularly for our volunteer members. When we look at where those calls occurred, the majority were west of the Courtenay River, which is consistent with pretty much every year that we've been tracking these stats. We still do have a consistent, significant portion of responses to the east side, but again, not as much as to the west. This split has remained fairly stable year after year and is an important operational consideration when we're looking at staffing, deployment, and response coverage across the city. Breaking those calls down further, alarm activations were the most common response types in 2025. Open burning and motor vehicle incidents followed, with public service calls and ambulance assists continue to represent a meaningful share of our workload. Prevention and public education are key parts of reducing emergency risk in the community. In 2025, staff completed more than 1,800 fire inspections and delivered 191 public education events. Most deficiencies identified during inspections were minor in nature, things like emergency lighting or fire extinguishers that required servicing, which indicates good overall compliance. This work plays a significant role in improving fire safety before emergencies occur. Supporting both response and prevention is a strong emphasis on training. In 2025, members completed over 4,900 hours of training covering fire suppression, auto extrication, self-rescue, and medical response. Included in that medical response was required BC Emergency Medical Assistance GAP training, which was completed, ensuring compliance with updated medical response standards. Essentially, they increased the types of protocols and treatment that we could provide to a patient, and it required everyone in our department to go through a day's worth of training. Additional training over and above everything else that they have to do. We've also started a new recruit class in September, and those members have been progressing very well through the program. They're actually at this stage now where they're going to be doing their first live fire training. They'll be going into the burn building that we have at the training ground, and we'll be seeing how they perform under those types of situations. Beyond day-to-day operations, the department also supported broader emergency and wildfire response efforts in 2025. While the local emergency program activations were limited, those would be for your warming and or cooling events, provincial wildfire activity remained significant. Courtenay Fire Department personnel were deployed to support wildfire suppression and emergency operations center operations during the Wesley Ridge and the Mount Underwood fires, working alongside regional and provincial partners. Alongside emergency response and training, the department also worked on several internal priorities throughout the year. These included work related to facilities, staffing analysis, and fleet planning, all managed while maintaining uninterrupted emergency service delivery. In summary, 2025 was a year of steady response activity, strong volunteer engagement, and continued emphasis on training, prevention, and regional cooperation. On behalf of the members of the Courtenay Fire Department, I'd like to thank Council for its continued support, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
So thanks so much for the report. It's great to see all the numbers. Maybe I have a quick question on whether or not this is something that gets advertised through social media, like on the volunteer firefighters Facebook page, that kind of stuff, or if it's something that just comes to council.
Are you referring to the stats?
Yeah, or the, yeah.
Generally just presented to council. We do some highlights of like bigger events on Facebook or use social media, but again, just prefer to use this venue to discuss. And they've got access to it through the annual report that comes out, I think, in June and things like that. So the
Yeah.
public does have access if they want it. They can also phone the fire department and we can answer questions that way as well. But yeah.
Fair enough. Thanks very much. And Mr. Garbutt.
Thank you through the mayor. With respect to talking about the activities of the city, it's a segue. I can mention our electronic newsletter. And so I just was looking at this afternoon and it will have information about the fire department activities. So it's a great opportunity to talk about the good work that the taxpayers of Courtenay fund and all the good work that our collective staff groups are doing.
And my apologies for not saying newsletter because it's so new, but I've gotten feedback on it already. Everything basically positive, which is great to hear. And again, probably an even better place to get that information out through. So thanks for Mr. Garbutt. Councillor McCollum.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor, and thanks for the report. I just had a question on the slide that was showing the east side response or the calls versus the west. Is that are those numbers limited to the city of Courtenay calls, or does that also include the our fire protection area that we cover?
Great question. That it's all the responses, including the fire protection district. The Courtenay Fire Protection District, though, is divided up into 3 chunks. One would be south of Walmart, so those would count in the west. The other would be north of Virginia Drive or Piercy area there. So, well, actually Piercy isn't, that would be considered west because it's west of the river. But north of Virginia Drive, that would be considered in the east. And then you have the chunk that basically is along Dyke Road, out by the animal hospital. There's a small piece of the fire protection district that belongs to that. That said, just off the top of my head, probably our responses to the fire protection district in total would be maybe 100 for the whole. So of the 13, that basically means that the other 1,200 responses, or let's just say 1,150 for sake of argument here, 1,150 are city responses.
Okay, yeah, that's helpful. Thanks for that context.
Thanks, Councillor McCollum and Councillor Moore.
Great, thanks, Mayor. Just a comment. I know it's not significant enough to include in your report, but from a managerial perspective, you did take council down to the Dashwood Fire Hall. And I wanted to mention that because that has influenced the design of the new fire hall to be as economical as possible and to scale back kind of the original plans. And I just wanted to show appreciation for kind of thinking outside the box and taking that extra effort so that we can try to manage the finances well and still have a great new fire hall, but modeling it somewhat after the one in Qualicum. And then also just it was just really, even though it was a sort of sad occasion at Lawrence Burns memorial service, it was just really impressive to see all the local firefighters, of course, from across the region, but just to hear, I think, comments, and when I was chatting with people after the service, there just seems to be a really great climate within the Courtenay Fire Department with our personnel. And and I think that's obviously kudos to yourself as well as other supervisors and the way that you operate the training programs and everything else. So thank you.
Thank you very much for the comments. I would like to just throw some appreciation to our honor guard. They were the ones that led the Burns family in and out. And I honestly have not seen them perform as well as they did for that particular event. It was really meaningful to the family. And I'm proud of everybody, obviously, but really proud of the effort that group put in. So again, thank you very much for acknowledging that.
Thanks, Councillor Moran and Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mary. That's actually what I wanted to do, and to acknowledge that honor guard and the fine job that your department did on that day. But I also wanted to commend you on your words and say how well you did on that occasion. And I think you and your department did the city proud as you honored the service of a truly remarkable leader. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, I don't see any further questions or comments. So again, thanks so much. And the celebration of life for Lawrence was just an amazing event. and just really appreciated everybody who took part in that to really honor his memory. So with that, if someone can make the recommendation. All right. All those in favor? And motion carries. And I do see that Inspector Mercer is here, so we can meander back to where did it go? Item 4.1 for the Comox Valley RCMP. And the microphone's already on. We've got the PowerPoint ready to go. Is the clicker up there as well? You should have a clicker there.
Part I didn't disinfect it either, so I'm sure you're fine, right? We joke, we kid, police and fire love each other. Well, thank you, council, for having me. I apologize for not being here on time. I was unfortunately called away on something else operationally, but nonetheless, I am here to discuss the third quarter report. The slides that I believe that have been presented to you should reflect quarter to quarter on it. My initial slide deck that I provided was a comparative from this year from last year. So while my data in front of me is from year to year, I'll roll through this. I don't think it'll differ too much. In the third quarter of the 2025-2026 fiscal year, there was a 505 file increase in the number of calls for service in Courtenay relative to the third quarter of the previous fiscal year. For the most common call types that we saw, it was traffic, unwanted persons, and check well-being that dominated most of our calls for service in this time period. We saw decreases in street-level calls for service, such as disturbances, suspicious persons, thefts, assist EHS, and other agencies. The most common call locations that we saw was that the provincial courthouse again dominated it in terms that we saw a 226 file difference from the previous year. So we're looking at about 126% increase. And I've talked about this before in terms of the source of these calls for service mainly stem from administrative investigative files such as fail to appear, breach of probation, breach of conditions as such. Because the provincial courthouse is situated within the city of Courtenay, these files are generated and they are investigated by members. So while they may be administrative in nature, there's still a level of component that needs to happen with it in terms of the execution of these arrest warrants or these conditions breach and the paperwork and disclosure that goes with it. In review of these files, it doesn't differ from my previous commentary that the majority of the courthouse files that are generated, if we looked at the origin of offenders, over half come from the Courtenay area, while the other remainder are split between the CVRD as well as the town of Comox. And then we have our outside influences that come into this area as well. Superstore was one of our bigger ones where we continually get theft of shoplifting complaints from there. But a lot of these complaints are resolved through the restorative justice and not necessarily through charges. And we have a really good partner with the Superstore Loss Prevention as well as a lot of our box stores in terms of using this avenue as a means to resolve files before they actually go to any sort of Crown supported charges. The Connect Warming Center, we did see an increase in a decrease in activity from here if we go from last year to this year. However, there comparative over years, we've actually seen a steady decrease in this area. I know this is prevalent to a lot of business owners as such to know and understand the activities that surround the Connect Warming Center, and I engage with CAO Garbett on this regularly, as well as any other business owners that have any concerns. I've shared similar data with them to show the policing efforts, enforcement efforts that we're doing, as well as the patrol activities that we're doing in these areas. We saw a 114% increase at the junction, which pertained mainly to missing persons complaints, theft of property, and unwanted persons as well. We did see a change in data entry for Courtney this year, in which you can see that there is unspecified location where there is a 1,300, over a 1,300% increase in this category. What this is we changed our way of scoring in terms of certain locations. If we get a complaint where we don't have a specific location with Courtney, if it's just called in, it's often referred to as just Courtney, BC. So that's how it's correlating to the data that you're seeing here, is that we don't actually have a specific area, but it's just assigned to the geographic area. If there are questions from council on that, I can take that at the end of the presentation and then source that back with my analyst if they want a little bit more context to that change in data point.
And we might have a slightly different presentation in our eScribe, because I see wildly different numbers. So I don't know if
and that might be the difference in presentation slide decks. Originally, I'd given this one, and then I followed up with a from a third quarter to second quarter. So
right,
that's why I also have a difference of data.
So for those thousands of people that are following us online and using that one, they might see there might be a bit of different thanks for the clarification.
It might be helpful if both are provided to the public after this presentation, so that they can see the difference. If they just want to follow on the screen along, we can just go from the comparative years, and then we can provide more drilled down data through the other slide deck on the third quarter. So thank you, Your Worship, for identifying.
Appreciate it.
I saw a lot of confused faces and mumbling over here.
Yeah.
So for downtown calls for service, there was a large increase in breach that we saw, 141%, approximately 230 files. So again, that was associated to the courthouse and probation area that I discussed earlier. Unwanted persons saw a 22% decrease, or a negative 133 file difference. Violent crime, we saw a 2% increase in violent crime relative to 2024. Higher numbers of harassment calls for service, in which there was a 22% increase from 2024, or approximately a 38 file difference. We did see minor drops in threats and sex offenses, robbery, homicide, arson, but a slight increase in assault and forcible confinement. As I've talked about before, when it comes to the heat map, we find most of our calls for service, whether they're violent crime or property crime, to be focused in the more dense or populated areas, where we find that the most traffic is, vehicle or human, or where we have residential areas or condensed businesses as such. So this is consistent in terms of the East Courtney and downtown areas, where we see the more inflamed part of the heat map, to show the high percentages of calls for these in these locations. With respect to property crime, we saw a 1% increase in property crime, or approximately 19 file difference relative to 2024, driven by about a 232% increase in mischief, so about a 44 file difference. We saw a drop in break and enters and petty offenses, as well as theft of bike and shoplifting, comparative to the 2024 year. Again, with the violent crime, as in the property crime, the same sort of areas that are being highlighted here as far as the majority of calls for service. With respect to the Controlled Drugs and Substance Act, in the third quarter of the 2025-2026 fiscal year, there was an 83%, or 20 file increase in drug trafficking files relative to the previous fiscal year. This increase was attributable to enforcement initiatives rather than a rise in the incidence of drug trafficking. We did see a drop in drug possession, which has always been our focus within the detachment, and especially when we have decriminalization that has expired. I want to relay my thoughts as a commander, is that our focus is not going to be shifting. It's going to be on the serious crimes when it comes to associated to drugs, such as drug trafficking and drug production. The 83% increase that we're seeing largely is attributable to a transfer of an individual that came into our detachment, who has a very keen sense of eye and sense of smell for these type of activities, and has made quite an impact actually within the downtown Courtney area, as well as the surrounding areas. We've executed a number of search warrants, so we're very thankful to have this person with his knowledge and his experience to bring in, to add on to the existing that we already have. So this is the benefits of having that individual. With respect to traffic, we've saw a 475% increase in dangerous driving, or a 19 file difference with that. Now, I don't actually have numbers to support if those were just calls that were we responded to, or if that also led to charges. I am curious about the impact as far as what we're making in terms of impaired driving. We do have a couple members within our detachment that receive recognition every year for the amount of impaired drivers that they've removed from the roadway. And we just got a recent transfer in which he's also been celebrated for the same stuff. So we're, I think when it comes to traffic offenses, we're getting better at it in terms of our proactive enforcement. We make it an annual priority to have our watches commit to stopping traffic violators as opposed to just responding calls and being proactively on the road. We're also seeing an introduction of a new traffic member that's going to be coming from the Surrey detachment. So we will be able to have 3 in our 4-man unit operational, hopefully within the next 90 to 120 days. So it'll even improve our traffic numbers. That is not mine. I'm more than happy to take confusing questions regarding the information that's been provided in front of you as opposed to the information that I presented on. 3 things that I just wanted to get out there ahead of any sort of questions is some of the events that we did this past quarter. I felt that we were fairly impactful in terms of our community involvement. We hosted our Haunted Cells event back in October that saw over 900 plus people visit our detachment throughout the course of the 3-hour period. This was also in part and parcel of trying to raise awareness and funds for some of our community partners, such as our local search and rescue. We were able to raise over $3,600 in funds for search and rescue, and approximately $1,300 in food donations for the Salvation Army that was also a community partner on this whole thing. The feedback on this particular event has been wildly positive. I personally greeted every person that came into the cells on that night and had conversations and dialogue with them. I was amazed by the number of First Canadians that were coming through. The conversations that we discussed where they were mystified by the fact that police would do something like this, considering from some of the countries that they come from originally. They have a very different take on police officers. Some come from more authoritative regions where they don't see this side of policing. So it was rewarding in that sense. Also, our youth that managed to come through, high-risk youth that they were laughing and sharing some of the stories that they may have had in those particular cells with their friends. But the commentary that I've been able to receive from probation as well as from mental health professionals have said that they were talking about this weeks after in terms of the positive impact that this had as far as how cool such an event was hosted. And they're looking forward to doing it next year. Don't know if that's going to happen. I might need to convince higher ups to allow us to do something like this again. But both from a detachment perspective and a community side, we saw an incredible amount of smiles and people appreciating the efforts that were put forward. And just a kudos to my staff for making the effort, because it was all in volunteer time that they did this, and they were all volunteers that participated in it. On top of that, we had the Wounded Warriors charity hockey game. While the RCMP doesn't put this on itself, Sergeant Rob Brennan takes a leading role in both planning and organizing this event. This is very personal to him as a first responder to raise awareness and funds. The game against the Glacier Kings brought in over approximately $40,000 in funds to their cause, and a combined total of $80,000 towards their initiative. In addition to that hockey game, myself and members in the detachment hosted a charity hockey game with the U15 North Island Tier 1 Bears minor hockey team, in which they played against our detachment recreation team. Also a toy drive to raise toys for persons in need and families in need during the holiday season. So it was a well-attended event and enjoyed by all the kids that went to it as well. But now I'll defer to questions from the floor after I pump my own tires. So.
Sure. Well, since you, I know I got a couple of questions here waiting, but since you were meandering off a little bit from the presentation, maybe the first question I'll ask about, just because there's a very recent article on the a potential new detachment building. And it's been something that has been talked about since I've been on council the last 11 years. And I know we were actually supposed to do a tour of North Cowichan. I was supposed to go there about a week or two ago and then realized the other mayors weren't invited. So we got them invited. So we're all going to be going down there because they've got a fairly similar size area. But the time that I've been on council, the holdup seems to be waiting for reports and things from sort of the higher ups in the RCMP. And so just wondering if those are
I'd say that generating the conversation and getting everyone in the same room to understand what we're asking for and what we're looking for, and the demonstrated interest from all the contributing municipal partners, I think is key before we start initiating. It started off with the KFN with their letter of support. I didn't make it a secret as far as that was my intention with all the municipal councils here. And I'm just starting to get my legs underneath me right now that I'm going to make this a big push and priority for this particular year. Now that I have some free time to pursue it. I had a collaborative discussion with the Village of Cumberland that while they're not a contributing municipal partner, they will be in the near future, and someone that should probably have some dialogue to it as far as getting a letter of support. My focus has always been to have a conversation both with the town of Comox and the city of Courtenay and bring people in that room and discuss what our intentions are going to be, formalize it, and then put it towards the RCMP as well as the public safety minister. And then we would look at maybe, again, at a later time, forming a committee to demonstrate that seriousness and interest in build. And I think once we start looking towards forming that committee, then the people from my senior ranks will start to get involved and tell you what steps are needed, what options are available to you, and what we can start doing to plan for that new detachment.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, because I know it feels like from my side that we've been asking, but we've been kind of just waiting on some of these studies and stuff. But the second question I had was just, since we're doing this tour, it might be a potential. I'm not sure if you'd be interested in coming along, but
yeah, I would love to go down to Duncan. Staff Sergeant Beard is a great commander there, and I'm sure he'd be more than hospitable to have us there. One thing I did fail to mention, sorry, I know we talked about the new detachment, but there was also a news release on the mobile integrated crisis response unit, or the microcar, or our car 64, which has been it came at the in September. We initiated the pilot initiative, and we decided to finally formally announce it yesterday. And the impact so far for the past several months has been really positive within the community, as far as what we're seeing in terms of relationship building and usage.
Awesome. No, really appreciate that, Mr. Corbett.
And I know there's questions from elected officials, so I'll be very quick. Island Health staff had reached out. Council had asked for a presentation about the outcomes of that. And so Leslie Howie from Island Health, and I think with Inspector Mercer, there's an expectation from council to actually have a presentation on the outcomes of that pilot. So stay tuned. We'll try and do that as quick as possible.
Fantastic. Really appreciate it. Thanks, Council, for humoring me, and I'll pass it over to Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor, and thanks for being here, Inspector. Congratulations on your Halloween event. I did drive by the detachment that night and wondered what was going on, but I spent quite a bit of time in those cells in my former life, so I had no wish to come and visit and see. I did want to ask two questions. One related to your stats, and I just wanted to clarify, when we see a large increase, say breaches, for example, do those represent distinct files or actual counts? The point I'm getting at is you could have an individual who has multiple counts.
Right.
And so a large number may not reflect that number of people. It may, somebody who's been on a spree or whatever would inflate those numbers.
Yeah, it's a great question. And let me bring that back to both my records person and my analyst to see if the data is drawn specifically based on the number of charges or actual identified persons that are being charged separately.
Thanks. The other thing I wanted to ask about, and I wanted to thank you for your efforts in enforcement on Back Road, which hopefully has eased off now that the Dyke Road is open again and there isn't the same pressure. But I just wondered if your members are noticing any difference related to the lower speed limits in residential neighborhoods that have come into effect in the last few months in Courtney.
I think when it was first introduced, as well as the traffic calming efforts, we were getting feedback from the community, mostly in terms of reporting persons that are violating those or believed to be violating those violations, or that aren't respecting the calming pattern that's putting in there. Back Road has always been a point of interest of me when I first came here, as I've spoken to before. I haven't had anything come up to my attention in the recent months. That's not to say that the existing problems still don't happen, or if the current efforts are making a difference. We have continued to increase our patrols within that area. Nothing has been reported up to me as far as additional complaints, but yeah, I think it was certainly more noticeable during the point where certain roads were closed down and detoured, and the amount of traffic that was being down there. So it's not surprising that with roads being opened up on Comox Avenue and such, that probably the amount of traffic that was going through there has probably dissipated a little bit.
All right, thanks, Councillor Hillian, for that, and Councillor Cole Hamilton.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor, and thanks for sharing these details about the community with us. I wanted to go to the breach question. I think every time we all have to kind of mentally remove that from the stats to some degree, because the breach all occurs at the courthouse, and it's not so much a crime in the way that most people think of crime. It's a state of someone being in a violation of the law, and it's an administrative part of the legal system. Would it be possible in future? Would it make sense to remove produce figures for us that removed the breach aspect and the courthouse as a location, given that they're qualitatively different than everything else we're talking about? And when there's a big increase in the breach, it skews the figures. And as an example, I think that there was a 2% reduction in total calls last year.
Right.
If you remove breach from that, then it's almost 5% reduction, which is a fair difference.
I was just having a conversation with my analyst today as far as what do we want the quarterly reports to look like moving forward, and I think that's a conversation that I can have through the CAOs and through council as far as what you would like to see represented in that data. It's not playing funny with the numbers, but I agree with you. I think that if there is a potential impact as far as the overall general feeling of safety in a community, that something like this might lead it in a different direction. So I think separating it from it is maybe something prudent to ask, and I can show the results of one report versus another on that too, just to show the distinctive difference, if that's something that council wishes for the future.
That would be great. Mayor, can I make just a follow-up?
Yeah.
Brief follow-up. I'm saying if that is the case, and that it really does make sense, they're qualitatively just different kinds of things than community sort of law enforcement. And I'm looking at the top 10 categories of file types. And if one removes breach, as we're just discussing, then there's one that increased, which was traffic incident. And Councillor Hillian's questions kind of illuminated some of that. But every other metric, 8 of them went down and 1 stayed the same. And I think a lot of them seem to speak to successfully addressing people's concerns about street disorder. I know that's something you've been working on, and things like unwanted person being down 11%, check well-being down 11%, disturbance down 5%, suspicious circumstances down 4%, theft is down, and then assisting other services, which I imagine was a function of overdoses and other crises. It does seem to speak to a consistent trend in managing those types of street disorder that people found challenging.
It represents a positive trend. Whether it consistently keeps going down in that direction is always something that we kind of monitor for the next quarter. And I think when we look at the total calls for service for Courtney, we have seen less calls for service this year than in the previous year. And But this quarter in of itself, the third quarter, was higher in some regards. So it goes up and down and it fluctuates. And I optimistically am cautious on these trends when we see that. I mean, it's certainly rewarding to see those key categories that are typically problematic and dominate a lot of our calls for service start to trend down in that area. And then we always look to how we can pat ourselves on the back as to how that, what caused that and whether it was, some sort of enforcement change or some sort of police strategy or something else that might have been a driver. So I think it's a relevant point and something that, hopefully we'll see in the final quarter, the same sort of drop in it when we go from fourth quarter to third quarter as well.
Well, it's an encouraging trend. It's good to hear that you're actively analyzing what's causing that and so as to continue it. Yeah, thanks very much.
Thanks very much, Councillor Cole Hamilton and Councillor Moore.
Great, thanks, Mayor. I have a couple questions. We'll see if I can fit them all in. Thanks so much for the report. So I noted that there were 36 calls at a private residence. Are you able to say whether is that a mental health related situation or maybe you're not able to share too much?
I can't share too much about that. Cumberland had a very similar type of thing where there was like an inflated call volume around a particular residence, and that was a youth related thing. It wasn't a care home or anything, but it was just sometimes we find that we get called to events that don't necessarily require police attendance, right? And I know in a different jurisdiction we get called. There's a residence that it shows like it spiked up there, but that was more health related because EHS requires us to stage to go into that house. It's
Right.
not really a police matter, right? But we're there just to keep the peace. So I mean, there is that element to it, and I can look at this particular residence, Councillor Moore, and get back to you on it if it is. Again, I don't have to reveal the details of it, but I can tell you the context as to which and why we're responding. Because when I do see specific residences like this that go up, me as a commander and from a former operations person is, I don't like seeing that. I don't like seeing why we're spending a considerable amount of police resources on one particular residence. And I try and look at ways to mitigate that, whether it's to form better relationships with the appropriate agency or community supports that are better to step in, or have some dialogue with those managers to say, like, this isn't working for us. We can't always just be there because you guys like to have us in your back pocket, right? So, and it doesn't do anything to mend any relationships with that person in the house either if they see the police behind them too. So I think it's a point of interest and one that I can bring back and probably get a better some better information for you on.
Yeah, no, I mean, I know it's come up in the past where we've had certain locations that have had a lot of calls. And so I was happy to see that the announcement around the mobile integrated crisis response unit. And, not to put a downer on it, but on social media, there were some comments kind of making it sound like it's fluff or it's not meaningful, because these kinds of programs don't have the quantitative or sorry, the numbers backing them. They're experiences that create change, and that happens over time. But I think those of us who, have worked in the field of working with these complex issues, that those changes do often happen, and it comes from relationship, which is a lot of what that program is all about. So,
and some of our early reporting that we were seeing, and this is why we talk about how trends go up and down, we have to be cautiously optimistic, is that when we were seeing within the first month and a bit of Micah introduced to Courtney, we were seeing a downtick in violence related calls for service. I'm getting excited thinking like, hey, is this maybe because people are getting the appropriate supports, they're getting connected to their treatment teams, we're introducing something early on so that they're not spiking or escalating to a point of crisis where someone gets hurt or harmed, right? We did see that number go up a little bit up again, but then again, it started to go down. So, I mean, is it a driving, reason as to why? No, but I mean, I always look at it, if that unit wasn't available, the data would read differently, right? And we know that from our experiences dealing with people that have mental health crisis, sometimes they escalate to a point where violence is involved, right? And that's when we get incorporated into the problem. So I think I feel more assured knowing that I have a trained, registered psychiatric nurse that has the ability to assess people
Yeah.
rather than one of my officers on the street. And that is just, it's really rewarding to have that opportunity right now.
Yeah, no, I'm just, I'm hoping that, the powers that be, whether through Island Health and your, organization are able to tease out some of that, because I believe that data is there, but it's just harder to kind of tease it out. It's not like we can do a report of, oh, we paved this many, we repaved, this many kilometers of
Right.
road, like those kind of, impacts are just not easy to measure, but, yeah, so I hope people will just be patient and allow this program to, to flourish and
For sure.
continue on. But one last question was around, I thought we had in our charts previously, I don't know if it was under domestic incidents or intimate partner violence. I thought we had that at one point. I was just curious around that. I know what the trends that we're seeing, just because sadly we've had, very high profile
Right.
incident with a woman who was killed by a partner who had done all the right things. And so it's always something that's on my mind in terms of primarily women experiencing violence and
And
intimate
I think
relationships.
I think that's a valid thing to have in reports. I always find that when it comes to sexual offenses and intimate violence, and that they have to have their special category represented in some sort of reporting, because those are the ones, like you said, that always catch the headlines, that you always wonder what could have been done, where was the trend, what were police doing. And we do have a special victims unit that focus primarily on those type of offenses. So I think moving forward, that's something that I can bring to my analyst and then tease that out so that it's something for you guys to consume and ask questions on later as well.
Great, thank you.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Councillor Morin. And I don't see any further questions. Mr. Gardner.
Thank you. Through the mayor, I wanted our elected officials to be able to answer questions. I can say that to your comments, Councillor Cole Hamilton, I've spoken with Inspector Mercer about breach, and I can let council know that all of the local governments on Vancouver Island that host provincial courthouses are questioning this statistic. It does show up in the crime severity index report. So the city manager of Duncan, Port Alberni, and myself have talked about this. So we've had a roundabout conversation in Campbell River as well. It is, I agree, a special category. And when it's not factored into our stats, there are very good news, and the work that our RCMP partners are doing is very good. So I actually feel that this is something that needs attention because it is a special category. I 100% agree and talked to Inspector Mercer about that. I'm glad that he's pulling that statistic out. It's just when you look at that report, that provincial index, it tells a story that is not a complete one. So I think we need to remain focused on that. And thank you for raising that, Councillor.
Yeah, and also there's a financial implication there when we're talking about, Cumberland paying more and Comox and the city of Courtenay, and this is something that, is quite specifically a provincial courthouse. So pass it over to Councillor Healy.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Well, I generally agree with that approach. I think we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that breaches are valuable work that our police officers do, and these reports are partly a reflection of police work. Sometimes it's interesting to note the distinction between breaches that involve minor offenders, people who maybe didn't show up for an appointment, and more significant offenders who may have violated a no contact order with a victim or any number of things. So I would suggest, rather than being entirely removed from the report, it simply be categorized separately as a separate issue to reflect the work that police are doing without necessarily being a reflection of crime in the community.
I would ask that too, just for the fact that there is a degree, like you said, a degree of work that can't be minimized on stuff like this, because it is essentially hours that are being committed elsewhere while it may be an administrative offense, there's legwork and disclosure that needs to be done with it as well.
Yeah, and that's how I interpreted what Councillor Cole Hamilton meant, but I'll pass it back to him.
Yeah, thanks very much. I appreciate the clarification. I certainly wouldn't want to lose track of those figures because as was being said, it's an important metric of how police time is being used. And because we happen to have a courthouse here, which other communities don't, we pay for a certain amount of police resources that are used for the administration of the court system rather than dealing with what most people think about as crime in our community. So useful to have them, but useful to be able to look at sort of true community-based stats that don't include them. Yeah, thanks.
Right, thanks for that clarification. With that, I think we can accept the report unanimously by council, and really appreciate the update today. Oh, sure.
Yeah,
You can ask Tim if you want.
I was wondering, given that there was mention by the mayor of the need for which you've been stating for a new division headquarters. There was a piece in the CBC today which discussing it. One thing that I haven't been able to find out from asking people is what the typical funding formula is for the building of a new structure like that. Is there some contribution by is it E Division, Green Timbers? Is there a contribution by the province, by the federal government? Is it per capita by community?
And it was a very similar question that was posed to me by the Village of Cumberland as far as what can we expect in terms of, you know, a set standard contribution level so that we can do future planning. I think that's step 4 or 5 down the road. And while it's a very important step, it's getting the interest and the commitment factor, and then the persons that are able to present those options to you, because it's a series of options. It's depending upon what you want for a detachment and what we agree on as far as an effective policing detachment. Currently, we have an integrated service where everyone's underneath one roof. So that's provincial members as well as municipal members. I have a set belief, and I truly do believe that our policing model that we have right now is beneficial to everyone, to the city of Courtenay, to the town of Comox, having everyone underneath one roof. There may be a consideration that you might not want to go that route. And there's different options that are potentially available before you, depending on what route you want to go. As it's going to be your detachment, right? Your build with whoever is contributing towards that. The amount of who pays what is something that will be decided in collaboration through the committee, through OSB, and through project management when they present those options to you. And I think the service delivery review that has been that is going down, that is happening in the background right now, will help set that foundation to move that conversation forward. Because it's long been standing that there are discrepancies as far as what community feels that they should pay for policing, what percentage. And I'm hoping that this report will present some data that will reflect what is currently needed for adequate and effective policing. That report should be ready to present to council in some fashion here in the next coming months. We set a diary date of April. Everything that I have right now is indicating that it's on time. I think that will also help build that discussion piece as far as the contributions towards the detachment, because, you know, whether it's going to be Cumberland and Comox and Courtenay, you need to be able to effectively plan through your taxes as far as what that portion is going to be that you're going to have to fund, right? So I don't want to put the cart before the horse or speak out of turn. I think taking it in small steps right now, as far as demonstrating that intent to build or that letter of support, then we can get that committee set up to answer those very important questions that you're asking right now.
Yeah, follow up. I mean, I understand everything you're saying. A lot of that makes sense, and certainly like the question of what this building should be. And to me, to some degree, that's a question of how big the pie is.
Right.
But I think one of the questions that local governments would need to think about before signing off on a letter saying that something should be done is what portion of the cost we would be responsible for covering, to make sure that, you know, we're doing our due diligence, we're thinking ahead.
Yeah.
Because these are significant sums, and you know, as municipalities, we try to plan ahead to make sure we're ready for them. So probably the sooner the better. And like you said, it might be step 4 or 5, but I think perhaps providing a bit more information on what sort of range of funding might be
and maybe
helpful
up until that point, if that's you know, certainly a critical consideration for this council before they commit to a letter, I can go back to division and maybe get some clarification to give you a ballpark idea on something like that, if that's better served than just me ambiguously making statements here. And then we'll see what that might generate in terms of.
To my mind, that seems really helpful to get
Okay.
a clearer idea. So thanks very much for that. Yeah.
Okay, appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Cole Hamilton. And again, like given the conversations that I've had both with the other elected mayors here, but more specifically provincially with our counterparts around this topic, we feel that I definitely feel like we've been definitely saying like this is something that needs to happen. So it's I'm happy to see it happening. One of the reasons for doing the tour down in North Cowichan is to find out those exact questions. How did they make it happen? What are lessons that they've learned? What were the challenges or pinch points and those kinds of things? So hopefully we'll get some light shed. And I think one of the things that is not lost on me when every year goes by on a project like this, whatever is going to be
Cost
of
goes up.
construction, the costs going up. And I think I've had this conversation with you. It was the first conversation I had with Inspector Curvers when I became mayor. And that was, over 7 years ago now. And so I think it's definitely something that we're keen on getting as much data as we can. So with that, I think we're flush out of questions for now, but really looking forward to the presentation on the new car and its impact on our community. And I just want to really say thanks. The feedback from organizations, but even just the impact that you guys have had with the different events you're putting on. It's just great to see that community integration. So much appreciated.
Well, thank you for your time this evening.
All right. Have a good day. All right. Over to internal reports and correspondence. We'll go back to our regularly scheduled agenda. 6.1 AVA Digital Gold Award for Courtney's website redesign. And I'll pass it over to Mr. Garbett.
Yeah, thank you. Through the mayor to council. Unfortunately, Angio is unwell today, and so Kate O'Connell is going to give a little overview of this briefing note, which is extremely exciting, and we're all proud, very proud of the work.
Thanks very much. Yes, I'm very sad that on one of the very few nights that Anne is not able to be here is one where we're going to have an opportunity to celebrate in a successful project that she was really an integral part and lead of. But to get to it, I'm excited to bring some fantastic news, but a significant accomplishment for the city of Courtenay. We've been awarded the AVA Digital Gold Award in recognition of our recent website redesign. The AVA Digital Awards is an esteemed international competition that celebrates excellence in digital creativity, branding, and strategy, recognizing the work of creative professionals across various fields, such as digital campaigns, website development, audio and visual production, and social media engagement. The award highlights innovative approaches to digital communication and the transformative impact of technology on communications and engagement. The website replacement project was initiated due to the pressing need for a modern and accessible city website. Our previous site, which was over a decade old, fell short of current designs and functionality standards. Through community consultation, we learned that many of our residents, particularly those from equity-deserving communities, relied heavily on our website for essential information, but faced challenges in navigating it. The new website, launched on July 22nd of last year, marks a significant step in enhancing our digital presence and providing better access to vital information for residents, businesses, staff, and visitors. One of the key elements of the project's success in this exceptional collaboration across all city departments. Every department played an important role in the development of the new site, ensuring that it truly reflects the diverse needs of our community members. This award is not just for a website, it is a shared achievement by everyone involved in the project. We came together to create a user-friendly, informative, and accessible digital platform. I want to extend special thanks to Angio, who's currently the Acting Director of Corporate Services, but regularly the Manager of Communication Services, for her leadership and unwavering commitment throughout this process, as well as to the communications team, whose expertise was crucial in bringing this redesign to life. Some highlights include, or key improvements include a user-centric design. So this redesigned website features streamlined navigation tailored to different user groups, making it easier for everyone to find information quickly. It's accessible, so we have enhanced the accessibility of our website to meet the WCAG 2.2 level AA standards, ensuring that it's usable by all members of our community. We've enhanced the search functionality so users can now easily navigate and aggregate results from various platforms, simplifying the process of finding information. There's also an interactive and multilingual features. The incorporation of interactive maps and support of over 80 languages with immediate translation broadens accessibility and engagement opportunities for everyone. This award represents the hard work and dedication of every individual who contributed to bringing this vision to life, but really it wouldn't have been possible without the input and perspectives of our residents and business community members who are extremely integral in informing how we shaped the way we interact with our community members. And with that, any questions council may have, but happy to celebrate an award.
Thank you so much, and huge kudos to Anne and the team. I know for someone like myself, I was chomping at the bit for quite some time, but seeing the outcome definitely was worth the wait. So, and I think I've mentioned it to Anne, I think quite a few times. I've mentioned it at this table as well. Just the ability to find information, which I think is its most critical use, is definitely heads and shoulders above what it used to be. So, Councillor Healing.
Thanks, Mayor. Hearty congratulations to you and your entire department. And in particular, I hope Ms. Guillot knows how much her work is valued and appreciated. She does excellent work, not just in relation to this website redesign, but throughout her duties. And she's an incredibly valued member of the city staff. I did want to ask if there is any sort of formal presentation that will be taking place, an expenses paid trip to somewhere or anything like that?
This is not one of those ones where we get to fly someplace and accept and get photos. They actually made the announcement through the website, and that's how we found out at the same time. I will say we did take the liberty of celebrating with some staff, including some gold medals made by Hot Chocolates to be able to share. So we all felt that pride of the award. But no, there's unfortunately no presentation here. It's a bit more subtle than that, but still appreciate it.
And on the agenda, there are some screenshots, and there's a bit of a PowerPoint there for those who are following us online. They can take a look at the site there, but hopefully they would have gotten there from our website. So again, huge kudos if we look at how to best communicate with the folks of the city of Courtenay and beyond. The website's definitely most effective way. So really happy to see that. And congratulations to everybody. Council just unanimously received this, and again, kudos to everybody involved. Next on the agenda, we have the Indigenous procurement update. Mr. Garbutt.
Thank you through the mayor to council. Council gave us direction to update our procurement policy as well. We committed to bring back some information on how it was going. We're one of the first municipalities to actively engage on this, and we're really proud of that work. We think it's very, very important, and it's consistent with council's direction on reconciliation and activities to support important capacity building in our community. Again, Mr. Ainsworth is going to give us an overview of this program, and he's available for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Garbutt. Through the city manager to mayor and council, this briefing note provides an update on the city's Indigenous procurement work, what staff are currently doing, and where we see the future opportunities. Indigenous procurement refers to procurement practices that intentionally increase participation by Indigenous-owned businesses in public sector supply chains. At its core, the work supports economic development, job creation, and capacity building within Indigenous communities while also advancing reconciliation in a practical and systemic way. In January 2023, Council adopted an updated procurement policy framework. This was a significant milestone as it modernized a policy last updated in 2011, and for the first time at the local government level in BC, it included explicit language supporting Indigenous procurement. Since that time, staff have been focused on embedding Indigenous procurement considerations into day-to-day procurement activity across the organization. Since policy adoption, staff have implemented Indigenous procurement across all non-construction procurement processes, updated templates, and delivered training to staff. Indigenous procurement considerations are now routinely discussed in bidder debriefs, and importantly, staff have received no negative feedback from the market on this approach to date. Through regular meetings with the Comox Economic Development Corporation, staff have developed indicative processes for capital construction projects informed by those discussions. Current work is focused on developing Indigenous procurement plans for major capital projects such as the East Courtenay Fire Hall and the Anderton Lift Station. Looking ahead, staff see opportunities to further refine Indigenous procurement and capital construction, including post-project reporting to assess effectiveness and inform continuous improvement. Continued staff training and organizational capacity building will remain a focus, alongside strengthening relationships with Indigenous partners. Overall, this work positions the city to deliver meaningful and systemic reconciliation outcomes while remaining fully compliant with applicable trade agreements and procurement best practices. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, and I appreciated the reports, and I'll pass it over to Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor, and thanks for staff's work on this initiative. I did note there was a question from the public that, among other things, asked about whether or not this initiative tracked engagement with Indigenous members of the community beyond Comox First Nation. And we do have certainly people with, from other Indigenous backgrounds along with Métis. And so I just wondered if, we have any way of tracking that within the procurement initiative.
So in terms of tracking the progress amongst the communities in the various First Nations, whether it be on Vancouver Island, BC, or more broadly, we don't necessarily have any tracking mechanisms currently in place for that. The structure of the policy around specific opportunities for specific First Nations is really around the construction procurement piece, and that's based on typically, drifting away from your question, I apologize, but I guess the answer is no, we don't have any tracking mechanisms, and I'll stop there. Yeah. Oh, yeah, sure. In terms of the construction procurement, the policy is highly defined for Comox First Nation businesses. And the reason for that is the work is occurring on their traditional territory. So there's two pieces to the policy, something that broadly applies across all procurement that isn't necessarily structured or directed specifically to Comox First Nation. On the construction side of things, because we're building those projects within the city limits that is on that traditional territory, we focus those opportunities to KFN and their businesses.
All right. Councillor Hillian?
Thanks, Mayor. Just to follow up, I know that there are a number of Indigenous businesses that are in fact connected to Comox. I don't know whether we have businesses in the community that have other Indigenous heritage that they identify as such, but I'm imagining that when we go through the procurement process and essentially award points for some sort of indication that there's an Indigenous component, that could in fact cover the whole range of communities that are represented within the valley beyond just Comox.
Yep, absolutely. So just speaking currently, or a procurement that recently closed, we did see a vendor that identified as an Indigenous business from Down Island. So we are asking those questions around whether or not the organization that's bidding a project is an Indigenous business, and to provide additional information and details to that effect.
Excellent. Thanks, Councillor Mr. Garvey.
Yeah, thank you through the mayor. Councillor Hillian, just with respect to the identification of Comox First Nation, and so I would say we're in a relatively unique position where we have one principal First Nation within the lands that incorporate our municipality. And so that's appropriate to identify that principal First Nation. If we're in the context where we had multiple First Nations, as is the case north and south, east and west of us, then we would do that. That's the explanation as to why there's a specific reference.
Thanks for that clarification. Appreciate that. Thank you. And we'll receive that unanimously. Thank you, Scott, for the presentation. And we'll move into bylaws. We have 7.1.1 Fees and Charges Amendment Bylaw 3208-2026 for solid waste. Okay, and I'll pass it over, I think, to Chris Thompson. Yeah, or
If
maybe
council has
Mr.
any
Garg.
questions, we can have a presentation, or if you want to proceed as is, carry on.
Okay, so looks like we're gonna, yep, fair enough, okay. So it's been moved and seconded. Doesn't sound like there's any questions. So with that, all those in favor? And motion carries. And we'll go to 7.1.2. The 2026 revenue anticipation borrowing bylaw 3209. Okay, it's been moved and seconded, and I heard that Mr. Langenmeyer was online. If there's any questions. There he is. Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, no, quickly, we do this every year this time of year, so I'm really happy just to move ahead. Thanks.
All right, with that, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? And motion carries. And that brings us to council reports. We'll start with Councillor Cole Hamilton, Councillor Frisch, Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. Two things. First of all, I want to acknowledge being part of the Project Watershed's celebration of the lifting of the wall at the Couscous site. And I would encourage anybody who hasn't had the opportunity to watch the process unfolding to take it in. It's quite remarkable to actually watch one of those steel plates being pulled out from start to finish and to see how long they are. And so there was an event on Thursday afternoon that was open to members of the public who had signed up with 3 sessions that yourself and others were at, and very well attended with a great deal of support for the project. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. I also wanted to acknowledge that in the past weeks, I've had the opportunity to reflect on the work that our staff does, sometimes in the face of a significant amount of pressure. And I'm aware that at the council table from time to time, either through reflecting things we've heard in the public or through questions that come up for ourselves, it might be implied that that council members such as myself don't always have the full regard for the work that our staff does, that perhaps it might be implied that we don't respect and value the work that our staff does. And I just want to reaffirm my own perspective that the staff that works for the City of Courtenay and the consultants that serve us do excellent work, sometimes under very difficult circumstances. And I want to reaffirm my faith and respect for the expertise and the professionalism that they bring to the work that they commit every day. And I think we're very fortunate to have the staff and consultants that we do have. And I think from time to time, the cut and thrust of what goes on at the council table may suggest otherwise, and it couldn't be further from the truth from my perspective. And I just wanted to acknowledge that today. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Councillor Hillian. I really appreciate that. I know the staff definitely have my utmost confidence, and I think that's pretty true of all of council. But yeah, sometimes comments can be made that could be misconstrued. So I appreciate you clarifying. Councillor McCullum, Councillor Morin, and again, just want to appreciate everybody who came to the Couscous event. It was extremely well attended, an amazing event, very inspiring to see our community come together. And I know there was many council members there. Last night I was able to present the Legion with a replacement Freedom of the City plaque, which apparently had gone AWOL a year or two ago. And so we were able to replace that, and they were very thankful. And it's a good time to reflect on the fact that the Legion, Canadian Legions, are celebrating 100 years this year. So it was a great presentation last night. And this is the time of year where I'm doing a lot of presentations to organizations like Rotary and Lions, that kind of thing. And so if there are any organizations out there that are wanting an update on city activities, happy to do that. But in particular, the Courtenay Rotary Club, yesterday I was able to go and accept a check. Actually, Joy took the check. I just got a picture with the big one for $10,000 to the Woodcote Park. And just, it's really great to see Rotary clubs kind of getting re-engaged. And over the last year and a bit, the Courtney Rotary Club has actually put over $150,000 into projects within the city of Courtney. So they were ready to go, and I know there's other Rotary clubs that are just as excited and happy to work with the city on projects. So with that, we'll adjourn.